what's the cause of the insurrection? What's the cause of the angst on the right? What are the real causes? Is it solely economic? Well, as I've always spoken about, it is economic, but there is a thread that's used to justify the economics. I want to play Matthew Dowd, who is one of the few that are willing to tell it like it is, but I want to take it a little step further after that. Check this out, and then we'll take it on the other side, because I think this is quite important.
For more on the state of the GOP, I want to bring in Matthew Dowd, who is chief strategist for the Bush-Cheney 2004 presidential campaign. Matthew, I think my over-under on Republican votes today was probably about 5. I was actually sort of surprised that there were 11 votes. What was your reaction?
I wasn't that surprised. I thought it would be somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 to 10. It ended up at 11. I mean, obviously, the story isn't the 10 or 11 or the 11 that stood for principle. It's the 199 that didn't, and who basically welcomed a 21st century political typhoid Mary into their midst, being a carrier of disease that's infected the entire Republican Party for a lengthy period of time. It's not just, I think one of the things, Chris, we don't focus on enough is what's behind all this, and what is the original sin of all of this that has led us here. It's not a denial of the school shootings. It's not a denial that Joe Biden won. It's not a denial that 9/11 happened. It's a denial of words in our original document, which that it was self-evident truth that all men are created equal. That's what's led us here, because we've never dealt with that disease in our country.
You know, there was a vote today that was a public vote, right, in which you have 199 members of the Republican Party voting to keep Marjorie Taylor Greene on her committees, 11 dissenting. Yesterday, you had another vote about sort of exile, right? It was about Liz Cheney, I think, who's number 3 in leadership, whether she'd be kicked off leadership. That was a secret ballot. You had 61 Republicans that wanted to kick her off for the sin of voting to impeach the president. And what I found striking about that is so much of the interpretation of House Republicans and Republicans in general is about the political calculations they're making. They don't want to get crosswise of Donald Trump, et cetera. This was a secret ballot. I think people need to take seriously the real beliefs of the members of the Republican Party and caucus as driving much of this.
This is not about Donald Trump. Everybody, I mean, so many people talk about the fear of Donald Trump. The Republican leaders and the Republican elected officials Donald Trump's a proxy, and Donald Trump's a proxy for the 80% or 85% of the Republican Party that believes, by and large, what Marjorie Taylor Greene believes. They believe that. And so the fear is a Republican primary voter who's much more aligned with Marjorie Taylor Greene than they are with Liz Cheney. That's the fear. And I think that's the problem in America today. We have a major party that is supported by millions of Americans, not a majority, but millions of Americans who have this same set of beliefs. So you can get rid of Donald Trump, cast him out as a pariah, put him down in Florida. It doesn't solve the fundamental problem in America today, because a smarter, more competent version of Donald Trump will arise and be more dangerous. That's hard to believe, be more dangerous to the country.
I guess what the question is, what does solve it, right? I mean, some kind of gatekeeping, some kind of have the factional fight out, have it out, is the only solution, I think. I mean, again, I'm looking at this from an outsider, but that's what it looks like to me.
I mean, I think there's many different small things we can do, but I think ultimately we have to deal with what's really behind this, which is we never held the people who wanted slavery accountable and responsible, and we never told the truth in the aftermath. And when Reconstruction failed, by and large, because Abraham Lincoln was killed, when Reconstruction failed, it led to more than 100 years where we finally got to Civil Rights and Voting Act. And you can draw a straight line, as I've said before, you can draw a straight line between the failure of Reconstruction and the inability to tell the truth about our country, all the way through Emmett Till and Medgar Evers and Martin Luther King, all the way up to Heather Heyer, and all the way up to police shootings that are unjustified. And so that, to me, is the truth Americans finally have to face. That's going to resolve our problems. When we finally face the truth, there is a segment of the population that does not believe all men and women in America are created equal. That's the fundamental problem.
Now, I want to take a little tangent. It's going to seem like a tangent, but it isn't. When he says there's a whole lot of people who don't believe that all men and women are created equal. What he's defining as white supremacy. And many people would take a look, when you look at the intelligentsia, the black intelligentsia in the country, or the liberal intelligentsia in the country, the way they look at it is like, stop talking simply about this being like Bernie Sanders always wanted to make everything an economic issue. There are certain things that people vote against their own interests because it is racial. Yes, now it is. Now it is. That is the truth. But the truth of the matter is, if we don't look at it from that perspective of economics, we would have missed the point. The reason white supremacy comes into being, the reason why racism and these issues come into being, is because it's a tool. When you're working with a friend, somebody, no matter how they look or whatever, you see each other's humanity. You're only scared of something that you're not familiar with. So initially, if somebody looks very different, or they have a third finger or something, that you may be a bit scared until you start working with them, and then everything then becomes normal. But if you institutionalize that there are differences based on X, Y, and Z, in this case, there are differences based on race, you can use that as a tool. You can use that as an economic tool. In other words, you can keep this segment very much down so that the errors in your the inefficiency, the selfishness of your economic system doesn't quite show up, because there's a pecking order, and these people look down at those others and say, "Oh, I could be there, so this is okay," so that you don't look at the top. White supremacy isn't a good thing for white people or black people or Chinese or Asian or whatever. It is a tool. And one of the reasons you don't see me being ferocious at the average human racist, you don't see me ferocious at these type of folk, is because it doesn't make any sense if you understand it is a tool. It is a tool that has been instituted on us for centuries. And if you acknowledge it as a tool, you work through it as a tool, and you abstract it away from the humanity of whoever is whoever is a victim of that tool, whether perpetrating it, or living it. It's like, I won't use that other analogy. So it is important for us to understand that. When you understand that, then you would say, I need to solve the economic issue. And as I solve the economic issue, I can also work on the stupidity that is white supremacy and racism. But you have to first acknowledge it as a tool and not a human deficiency, not something intrinsic to any particular race or creed or whatever. And once you are clear and focused on what has been done to all of us for a few, once you can categorize in your mind that white supremacy has nothing to do with white people in the aggregate, what it has to do is keeping a very few on top and using the big mass of white people as their tool to further their gains. Folks, it's deep. Believe it, it's deep. And too many are not understanding and talking about it. We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number 1, subscribe to our channel. And number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.